You cooking?
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The Trump administration's giving hints it may ignore a federal judge's ruling restricting Elon Musk and his associates in DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, from accessing the Treasury Department's critical payment systems. In his decision, U.S. District Judge Paul Engelmeyer warned about the, quote, disclosure of sensitive and confidential information and the heightened risk that the systems in question will be more vulnerable than before to hacking, unquote. Vice President J.D. Vance responded to the ruling by writing on social media, quote, judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power, unquote. Elon Musk also called for the judge to be impeached. On Sunday, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy appeared on ABC This Week and warned against what he called the billionaire takeover of the government.
And I think this is the most serious constitutional crisis the country has faced, certainly since Watergate. The president is attempting to seize control of power and for corrupt purposes. The president wants to be able to decide how and where money is spent so that he can reward his political friends, he can punish his political enemies. That is the evisceration of democracy.
In other news about DOGE, Elon Musk says he's rehiring 25-year-old Marco Ellis, who resigned after being linked to a deleted social media account that advocated racism and eugenics, among other things, writing, normalize Indian hate. Trump and J.D. Vance had both called for him to be rehired. Donald Trump has repeated his proposal for the United States to take ownership of Gaza, describing Gaza as a, quote, big real estate site. Trump said it would be a, quote, big mistake to let Palestinians stay there. This comes as the State Department's announced a new $7 billion arms sale to Israel, including thousands of bombs and missiles. On Saturday, Israel and Hamas conducted another swap of captives. Hamas released 3 Israeli men who'd been held hostage since October 7, 2023. Israeli health officials said the freed men were suffering from severe malnutrition. Israel released 183 Palestinians, including at least 7 who needed immediate hospital care. This is Ala Alaga, one of the Palestinians released Saturday.
The conditions were very bad. No food, no water, no medicine. We were in a torture center for 24 hours. I spent 40 days handcuffed and blindfolded, and I could not go to the bathroom or anywhere else. There was no food. I entered prison at 100 kilograms and left at 58 kilograms.
In other news from Gaza, Israeli forces have withdrawn from the Netzarim.
Maybe he should have thought that if he can't do the time, he shouldn't have done the crime. Am I right?
Corridor, the key strip of land that bisects Gaza. Meanwhile, a new investigation by 972 Magazine and Local Call reveals Israeli forces indiscriminately drop bunker buster bombs on residential buildings in Gaza in an attempt to flood underground tunnels with lethal fumes in order to suffocate Hamas fighters. But 972 reports dozens of these Israeli airstrikes likely endangered or killed hostages as well.
They deserved it.
In the occupied West Bank, Israel's intensifying its military assault, which has already displaced 35,000 Palestinians. On Saturday, Israeli troops raided the Ner Shams refugee camp, where they killed 2 women, including one 23-year-old, Sundus Jamal Jalabi, who was 8 months pregnant.
Around the
Her
globe.
husband was critically injured. Palestinian officials said efforts to save her baby failed in part because the Israeli military prevented the couple from being transferred to the hospital. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, an Israeli airstrike killed 6 people Saturday in the eastern Bekaa region in the latest Israeli violation of the November ceasefire. On Friday, a Trump-appointed judge temporarily blocked the Trump administration's plan to dismantle USAID and lay off thousands of workers. The judge's ruling came hours after government workers took down USAID signage from the agency's headquarters. Internal documents suggest the Trump administration's planning to cut the size of USAID staff from about 10,000 to under 300. Global aid organizations are warning the dismantling of the aid agency could impact millions of the world's most vulnerable people. The United Nations AIDS Agency warned Friday that more than 6 million people could die from HIV and AIDS over the next 4 years if PEPFAR, the president's emergency plan for AIDS relief, is not reauthorized.
As UNAIDS, we estimate that if PEPFAR wasn't reauthorized and other resources were not found for the HIV response, there would be a 400% increase in AIDS death. That's 6.3 million people, 6.3 million AIDS-related deaths that will occur in future.
PEPFAR was founded by former President George W. Bush. The National Institutes of Health has announced plans to slash about $4 billion in funding for biomedical research, a move that could have an immediate impact on research at universities, medical schools, and research hospitals. The AAMC, the Association of American Medical Colleges, criticized NIH's decision, saying it will, quote, diminish the nation's research capacity, slowing scientific progress, and depriving patients, families, and communities across the country of new treatments, diagnostics, and preventative interventions, unquote. Cutting NIH funding was a part of the Project 2025 playbook. The Trump administration's effectively shut down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The Bureau's acting director, Russell Vought, who is the architect of Project 2025, has closed the Bureau's office for the next week and has ordered staff to halt nearly all work. Vought's move came after Elon Musk wrote a message Friday on X that said CFPB RIP, along with an emoji of a tombstone. Since its formation in 2011, the Bureau has helped return about $21 billion to consumers, but the agency's long been criticized by Republicans and big business interests. In other economic news, Trump's announced he will soon impose 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports. Meanwhile, retaliatory Chinese tariffs on a number of U.S. products have taken effect today as a global trade war heats up. A federal judge in New Mexico has temporarily blocked the U.S. government from sending 3 Venezuelan men in immigration detention to Guantanamo. The Center for Constitutional Rights had sought an emergency order to protect the 3 men. Over the weekend, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem visited the U.S. Navy base in Cuba days after the first detained immigrants were flown there. In other immigration news, NBC is reporting the Trump administration is moving forward with restarting the detention of migrant families, including those with young children. ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is reportedly preparing to seek bids from private prison companies to run the facilities. President Trump's ordered a freeze on foreign aid to South Africa, claiming South Africa's white population is facing unjust racial discrimination. Trump's repeatedly criticized a new land reform law in South Africa where the country's white minority still owns the vast majority of farmland 30 years after the end of apartheid rule. We'll have more on this story later, and the headlines will go to South Africa. In Tanzania, leaders of Eastern and Southern African regional blocs called for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in eastern Congo as they met this weekend for an unprecedented joint summit. This is Veronica Nduva, Secretary General of the East African Community.
The joint summit directed resumption of direct negotiations and dialogue with all state and non-state parties, military and non-military, including the M23.
Also in attendance was Rwandan President Paul Kagame, who's come under mounting pressure over the presence of Rwandan troops in eastern Congo and Rwanda's backing of the M23 fighters, though Kagame continues to deny any involvement. The UN says some 3,000 people were killed in just 1 week of fighting after the M23 fighters seized the key city of Goma in late January. Over 500,000 people have been displaced in eastern Congo in recent weeks, compounding an already severe humanitarian crisis. There have been widespread reports of sexual violence. Sam Nujoma, freedom fighter turned president who led Namibia to independence from apartheid South Africa in 1990, has died at the age of 95. Often referred to as Namibia's founding father, Nujoma was known for his motto, "A united people striving to achieve a common good for all members of the society will always emerge victorious." Ecuador's presidential election will be decided in a runoff April 13th after conservative incumbent President Daniel Noboa and leftist lawyer Luisa Gonzalez beat out 14 other candidates, both of them receiving over 44% of the vote. Noboa and Gonzalez previously faced off in a 2023 snap election. Both candidates vowed to crack down on crime. Last year, President Noboa, son of an ultra-rich banana magnate, declared a state of internal armed conflict to more easily deploy the military. Luisa Gonzalez, a protege of former President Rafael Correa, has promised to increase social spending. She called for Ecuadorians to unite to defeat Noboa in the second round.
Months ago, we called for unity among the parties of the left and the center. We also called on the industry to join us, as well as civil society. I've also called on the parties of the right and all those who want to recover the country to make Ecuador the safest country in Latin America.
In Madrid, leaders of Europe's extreme right parties gathered Saturday at an event organized by Spain's Vox party called Make Europe Great Again. Attendees railed against immigration and hailed Trump's return to office. Speakers included Italy's Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini, French National Rally Party leader Marine Le Pen, and Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban.
The Trump tornado has changed the world in just a few weeks. An era has ended. Yesterday, we were their heretics. Today, we are the mainstream.
Meanwhile, in Germany, at least 200,000 protesters rallied in Munich Saturday against the far-right anti-immigrant Alternative for Germany party, known as AfD, which is polling in second place 2 weeks ahead of national elections. Back in Washington, D.C., President Trump has moved to take over the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. On Friday, Trump fired numerous board members and said he would become the new chair of the Kennedy Center. Meanwhile, the National Endowment for the Arts has shut down a grant program aimed at underserved groups and communities. The NEA under Trump says it is looking to fund more projects celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States. On Sunday night, one of the Kennedy board members who was just fired, the acclaimed musician Jon Batiste, sang the Star-Spangled Banner at the start of the Super Bowl with President Trump in attendance. Ahead of the game, the NFL removed the words "End Racism" from the end zones. During Kendrick Lamar's halftime performance, one of the dancers unveiled a Sudanese flag and Palestinian flag sewn together. The performer managed to run around the field holding the flags for about 20 seconds. Security guards then tackled the performer, who was arrested. Meanwhile, the state of Louisiana is facing criticism for efforts to remove unhoused people from the streets of New Orleans before the Super Bowl. The Guardian reports the state spent $17.5 million to coerce more than 100 unhoused people to be bused to a remote, unheated warehouse that lacked enough blankets and cots. And those are some of the headlines.
Cots?
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
Who is that?
You know, CNN has been pretty hit or miss recently, but I gotta credit Jake Tapper here. A brilliant segment on exposing the absolute dishonest blob that is Trump's argument and lawsuit and dangerous approach to this whole CBS debacle. So what am I talking about? Well, I can't believe I didn't do this, but Jake Tapper went and found a Fox News interview where Fox News edited out a really embarrassing part of it and broadcasted to everyone the edited version where Trump doesn't look as bad. And then we have the full footage. Jake Tapper plays it for everyone to see, proving that Trump's argument that editing an interview, which is just ridiculous, justifies him doing, which is what it's really about, political persecutions of outlets that he doesn't like. That's what this is about. And Jake Tapper, by bringing up this interview, exposes that. Let me play this segment from the beginning where he walks through what it is that the Trump side's arguing, the absurdity of it, the dangerous, the anti-free speech spirit of it, which is that he'll explain the context, but essentially CBS 60 Minutes interview, we've talked about it before, and just like every 60 Minutes interview ever, there's edits because you have to fit it into a nice little spot in between commercials, perfect little beep, beep, beep. And at one point when they broadcasted it like on CBS mornings or a debut of the interview, there was an edit, and then when they had more time, they played more of it. And Trump wants you to believe that means he gets to try to attack CBS. He says they should be off the air. But he benefited from a far more egregious example of editing an interview that actually did change the meaning of what he said, unlike the Kamala Harris edit. If you appreciate the show, please do click the subscribe button. Here's Jake Tapper breaking it down. It'll take a second for him to get to the Trump interview part, but first is the context.
In our politics lead, there's a story playing out between Paramount and CBS News, President Trump, and the Federal Communications Commission that any American who values a free and independent press should care about, including Trump supporters who should not like the precedent that is being set. The story started last fall when 60 Minutes interviewed then Vice President Kamala Harris. Then candidate Trump did not agree to sit down with the news magazine, but nonetheless, he protested how 60 Minutes edited the Harris interview, specifically the answer she gave after correspondent Bill Whitaker asked the vice president why Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was not listening to the Biden administration. Now, in a preview clip that ran on CBS's Face the Nation Sunday morning, Harris was shown answering like this.
The work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But during 60 Minutes airing, Harris gave this answer to the same question.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Now, CBS News explained the discrepancy by saying they had merely run two different parts from the same longer answer, and that is indeed what the transcript revealed. Now, CBS News did not post the transcript at the time, but they did turn it over to the FCC this week, and the FCC released the transcript to the public yesterday. But that is far from what Donald Trump alleged happened.
They took the answer out in its entirety, threw it away, and they put another answer in.
Now, that is, as we saw from the transcript, obviously not what happened at all. But still, Donald Trump called this incident, quote, the greatest fraud in broadcast history, unquote. Mr. Trump said, quote, CBS should lose its license, unquote. And then Trump sued under news distortion rules for $10 billion. Now, the suit is widely regarded by legal and First Amendment experts as, well, as one put it, quote, a frivolous and dangerous attempt by a politician to control the news media. Broadcasters edit interviews.
I needed to shave.
It's editorial judgment.
My neck.
For example, Fox in June 2024 aired this.
Would you files?
Yeah, I would.
But that wasn't Trump's actual whole answer. It was a taped interview. And as Semaphore noted at the time, Mr. Trump, in the full unedited version, sounded a lot less definitive about releasing the Epstein files. Here's the whole answer.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know it. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world. But I think I would, or at least
Do you think that would restore trust? help restore trust?
Yeah, I don't know about Epstein so much as I do the others. Certainly about the way he died. It would be interesting to find out what happened there, because that was a weird situation, and the cameras didn't happen to be working, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I'd go a long way toward that one.
Quite different, right? Now look, Fox had every right to make that edit.
Exactly. And I might play a little bit more of this, but oh, it's brutal. I wish Jake. F you, Jake. You beat me to it. No, that was good. Because you saw the two parts, which is a part of the same. When I say over and over, she had her full answer. You can go watch it. We linked it last time. Go watch it. And at part, I do wish it had been more succinct and clear and answered the question more, as I wish with a lot of politicians. Yes. But because there was a little bit of a long-winded answer, they thought, all right, well, here, we'll take this part. Ow. Gosh. Hit my funny bone. It's not funny at all. They edited it one way. And then I actually think this is good because for the time constraints they had, they couldn't play the full answer. But they played more of the answer because they had a chance to broadcast it in different places, which I think is valuable for people to see. But the essence of her answer was the same. She was making the same point, as you saw. And you can take issue with the point. You can criticize the tact, the delivery, all of it, fair. But she was making the same point, and the meaning was the same. Whereas Trump's meaning was different. And that's where editing gets fishy. Anytime we've done interviews or shows with people, especially if it's going to be oppositional, the promise I give them is we might edit it, because sometimes we end up doing a 2-hour interview, and that's just, none of you are going to want to watch that. So we'll chop it down. But my dedication is I'll always make sure the meaning of your point remains. I won't make it seem like by grabbing different parts or cutting something out of context that you said something or intended to say something that you didn't really. That's where I think editing is dishonest. But if you keep the meaning, as the CBS one did, but the Fox News one didn't, because in the original, and I remember covering this at the time, in the original interview that was broadcasted on national TV, he goes, yeah, cut. And then the next question gets asked. So the American people watching it are thinking, all right, he unequivocally thinks we should release the Epstein files. But you extend that like 3 seconds, and he starts going, oh, that one less so. I don't know, a lot of phony stuff, a lot of phony stuff about people who might have hair transplants and put on makeup in the morning and play a lot of golf. There's just funny stuff about people. I don't know what to say. And that changes the meaning completely of his answer. And to Jake Tapper's point, while you can criticize Fox News for being dishonest with that, they have every right to do it. It would be a violation of their free speech rights for the government to come in and say you don't have the ability to choose how you edit your interviews. Unless there was a contractual agreement between Trump and them that they wouldn't edit it, right? Or that he'd have editorial control. Then you would have potential enforcement. But when it is not one of those scenarios, it's absurd and a threat to journalism to come in and say you should pay damages and you should be taken off the air because you exercise your First Amendment right. And I want to repeat again, given that they gave us the opportunity to see more of that answer, because when they broadcasted at one place, they grabbed part and then grabbed the other part so that we could see, even though, not at the same time, the answer, the whole answer. And then whenever you go watch the full thing, the meaning's the same. So given that you could probably find interviews of liberal outlets, if Trump was wanting to go off on this, that it would still be an absolute attack and assault on the First Amendment, but he could make a more compelling argument to his base because there'd be more egregious examples of deceptive editing. That's not what this was. This was basic time constraint edits that any editor would make. So they found the worst example. But he was desperate. And I thought it was just a campaign thing. I really did. I knew he wants to target outlets he doesn't like. But his obsession with this particular issue, I thought it was just a campaign thing to make people doubt if Kamala Harris, is getting assists from the media. But no, he's following through. And I want to remind you of actually what Jake Tapper seems to be getting into here.
Now, did that edit make Trump look more decisive, less equivocating? Did it make Trump, therefore, look better? Yep. Was that why Fox did it? I have no idea. Maybe they just had some timing issues. Either way, it's Fox's right to do it, just as it was Fox's right to do it when they had Trump's surprise visit to a Bronx barber shop on air, which they also cut down significantly, and coincidentally or not, flatteringly, Fox had the right to do it. And not just because cable and broadcast networks have different rules. Now, the 60 Minutes editing case would almost certainly fail spectacularly in court, according to legal experts. But Paramount Global, which owns CBS News, is currently trying to merge with Skydance Media. And in order to do that, Paramount will need the approval of the Trump administration, specifically the FCC, which, under its new commissioner, Brendan Carr, has suggested that Trump's news distortion complaint will be considered by the FCC before any merger can be approved. Enter Sherry Redstone, the owner of Paramount, who stands to make about $8 billion if this deal goes through. Said one CBS News employee to me about this, quote, "Everyone expects Sherry settles with Donald Trump. She is not concerned about her legacy, democracy, or the work we do. It's only about the deal, her pocketbook. The only way she wouldn't settle is if Skydance sent her a smoke signal to hold off. Surely they realize a settlement diminishes the brand and value of 60 Minutes, which they claim to admire and want to own," unquote. For Paramount to settle this suit would be hoisting a white flag of surrender. It would be the network of Edward R. Murrow, at the behest of its owners, saying, "We will not speak truth to power. We will acquiesce to power."
This is a bright alarm, red alert, ring the bells, pound the drums, all of it sort of moment. This is a battle for the First Amendment, a metaphorical political battle. And he explained it perfectly there, but just to reiterate, this is what we're seeing. This is what we're seeing when we talk about the oligarchy. This is what we're seeing with, we're talking about people bending the knee for their own interests to Trump instead of standing up for our democracy. Saying that Trump and then future presidents should be assuming that they can get away with, and the people in positions of power like the owner of Paramount, that they're not going to push back because they just want something good for themselves. So now the precedent that's being set is that the president should go get someone, in this case, FCC commissioner, who can prevent this merger from going through, prevent this Paramount, now I'm blanking on her name, but individual from making a bunch of money. And so she's going to go and get CBS to settle the lawsuit to make it look like Trump is right and he should be vindicated and he should get paid a bunch of money because he's weaponizing the government. As my earpiece transmitter is falling again. I'm sorry. It's really been giving me a hard time lately.
Just say IFB, bro.
This is a really scary moment for our democracy, for free speech, for the First Amendment. Paramount is openly flirting with the idea of, and seems more likely to go with the idea of, let's profit over protect our democracy. Let's profit over resisting a horrific precedent. And because of the confidence that Trump's FCC chair, or commissioner, I should say, can make this all happen for Trump, they're actually expanding the lawsuit. The Wrap reports Donald Trump doubles CBS damage claim to $20 billion in amended lawsuit because Kamala Harris had nothing, because nothing happened. Nothing happened. Trump's 60 Minutes interview was edited. That Fox News interview was edited. And unlike the Fox News interview and a bunch of other Trump interviews, like the barbershop thing, the meaning was not changed at all in her response. And Trump thinks he should be paid $20 billion for CBS doing nothing other than not being pro-Trump enough. And they're not even the most anti-Trump of the outlets. President Trump has amended his lawsuit against CBS, effectively doubling the damage claim to $20 million for what he says was a deceptive edit. I just wish they would say for what he falsely says was what he delusionally says was a deceptive edit of this interview. It's so annoying where people will go, well, Donald Trump is breaking news. Donald Trump claims that the entire election would have been different, even though he won the election. So I don't understand how the election changing results would mean anything when he actually won. But he's saying that he should be awarded $20 billion for a deceptive edit that made Kamala Harris look better. Kamala Harris disputes this. Next story. No! More performative neutrality. I'm sick of it. I'm sorry that I'm screaming,
What's
everybody.
the
Trump
button to
sued
fucking bring up the
late
thing?
last year saying
How
60
do I
Minutes
do the
favorably
thing?
arranged the then I
Hello?
don't even, yeah, we get it. We get what
is my
Trump's saying,
buttons?
but essentially
What
his
are my
new claim
key
as to why he
bindings?
should double the damages, trying to leverage a bigger settlement, as it seems Paramount's going to demand that CBS goes ahead because the owner wants to make a bunch of money.
Big money.
And so he's saying this hurt Truth Social, this hurt Trump media, whatever, because they were deploying unfair media practices. So in the competitive market, that was harmful to Truth Social. What?
You okay, pal?
That doesn't make any sense. I talked about this already, but just to add, since I'm so upset, let's just throw more fuel on the fire. Associated Press reports Senate confirms Project 2025 architect Russell Vought to lead powerful White House budget office. Who is Russell Vought?
Walk. Why do I
Who's
want
Russell
walk?
Vought?
Why would I ever need to
Russell
walk?
Vought. Oh, he was one of the leaders of Project 2025. And now he's in one of the most
Q. I thought it was
powerful
Q,
positions
but
of power.
I don't need
but
control. Right?
But I was still. But the Orange Man told me that he didn't know Project 20. He wasn't doing Project 2025. It's difficult because sometimes words fail to really deliver to you properly, which is a part of why I'm getting so amped up right now. The moment we're in. The great American experiment, the democratic life of this country. It's all hanging in the balance. And yeah, whatever happens, America, it's still gonna continue. But what will that mean if it's so fundamentally deteriorated by people who have so little respect for what I thought we were supposed to agree on, which is basic American principles? And now you have Trump and his FCC commissioner explicitly saying, yeah, we're gonna separately block a merger. Oh, totally unrelated to this, because Trump is a pouty boy and wants to harm outlets that dare to not be loyal to him. Just like he said about ABC, just like he said about MSNBC. And in a moment where these are the stakes, you have people like Sherry Redstone. Where's her patriotism? The Paramount owner. Where's her patriotism? Throw this up on screen. Sherry Redstone. I think more pressure needs to be put on her, by the way. On Sherry Redstone publicly.
Yeah, let's form
Please
a
do
lynch
not do
mob.
this to our democracy. Saying that media outlets' response to being threatened by Trump and then future presidents will be to capitulate for their own gain. Yeah, that's the whole risk of having people in power who don't respect our democracy. Our institutions are only as powerful or only as stable and democratic and all of
It's
those beautiful
capitalism.
things if people are willing
They're
to maintain that,
capitalist.
who are operating the institution.
Okay? They
And
only
so this
respect
is the risk, which is
money.
you can then start leveraging those institutions.
Okay?
To
Nothing
make
will
it,
change.
To make it a financially beneficial decision for people to capitulate to your every
business owners and shit, media conglomerates respecting democracy.
And then just if you are out there and you support Trump and you feel like the liberals, they're going crazy, what do you really make of this? Are you patriotic? Because what is being patriotic if not the First Amendment, the first one, to want to stand up to that, for that? What is patriotism if you don't actually stand for anything that is what's supposed to make America worthy of your patriotism? It's not hyperbole to look at Trump wanting media outlets and leveraging governmental power, which is the whole First Amendment thing, to get his way if media outlets won't act exactly how he wants them to. I really could just break down crying over this, thinking about all the people who, in some cases, have sacrificed for these ideas, and MAGA is just spitting all over that. This really is a pivotal moment, and from billionaires to any random folks, people need to choose this moment to be the moment they stand up for principle and stand up for our democracy. Sorry for all the screaming. Share your thoughts in the comments.
IMF Managing Director commends Ethiopia's macroeconomic reforms. International Monetary Fund, IMF, Managing Director, Kristalina Georgieva praised the significant positive impact of the macroeconomic reforms in the country. Having concluded her two-day visit to Ethiopia, the IMF Managing Director Georgieva gave a press statement. She hailed Ethiopia's impressive economic growth, noting that last year's GDP growth reached 8.
For Ethiopia to be proud of. Last year's growth exceeded projections significantly. We were projecting 6.1%. The country ended with 8.1% GDP growth, and it is because of freeing space for private initiative and for higher productivity.
Why is it like
in
this?
agriculture, in industries, in services. I am confident that this country will grow economically, and it would grow in terms of its significance for the neighborhood and for the whole continent.
It will be
of Africa.
significant.
Georgieva attributed this growth to the government's efforts to create space for private initiatives and enhance productivity across agriculture, industry, and service sectors. She expressed her confidence in Ethiopia's economic trajectory. Moreover, the managing director
The
urged
IMF has shown trust in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is proving that it earns this trust. The largest concessional program we have ever financed, $3.5 billion, is to support the transformation of the Ethiopian economy.
Ethiopians to remain united behind the reform, underscoring that it would bring tremendous outcomes. Meanwhile, during her visit, Georgieva was captivated by the significant developments, including the Adwa Memorial Museum, where she expressed her admiration.
The reform program that Ethiopia has embraced is tough. It takes time, but it would bring tremendous rewards. Some are already coming.
It's
more
almost like
will
he
come.
believes in this shit. I know,
The
cringe
society
lips, bro.
has to be united behind these reforms.
For Ethiopia's rich history.
That reminds me. Yesterday we were watching something, and I was like, wow, what a great video. This is what Alan needs to see to understand what we mean when we talk about anarchism and confederalism. Let me find it real quick after I try and get these settings to work. Okay, that definitely changed. Epic. Isn't it crazy? Like, you can actually see, because my my display's actually set to 4K now, but like just the difference between the setting under 4K, you can see like all this negative space, and that's not, you know, because I'm zoomed in too, you know, like all this negative space, like significant how much bigger 4K is. Redonko. Let's see if it still fits the window, if it fucks up. See, it does. Yeah, it's a little, there's a little extra space on the side, but that's okay. Just to be clear, I did not write that song. I would never have sex with a child, just to be clear. Why can't I grab you? There we go. Okay, now that video. What was it? I hope I saved it. Watch, you're not even here anymore, and I play for nobody. Nope.
I want to talk in this really briefly.
Yes, I did save it to show you. Are you still here? I'll eat your toes if you walked away while I play this video. I have it, but I have to know you're still here before I play it.
Overall, Georgieva's visit underscores the IMF's commitment to supporting Ethiopia as it navigates its economic reforms and strives for sustainable growth.
Adwa Museum. You, Ethiopia, you made Africa proud once. And I'm so confident at the conclusion of my visit, you will make Africa proud again with the strength of your economy and the vibrancy that it will demonstrate.
Right away.
This is Democracy Watch. Mark, Donald Trump just got some bad news from a federal judge. As you know, he moved to fire thousands of USAID employees. That effort didn't work especially well in court. Can you explain what just happened?
Yeah, this is breaking news, and this is really important because we have seen Donald Trump target USAID. We have seen Marco Rubio, who, by the way, used to say he was a big fan of USAID. He turned out to go along with this. And we saw Elon Musk, most importantly, perhaps, target USAID.
Fire
and
power.
the net effect of this was to try to put on administrative leave 2,700 employees of USAID overseas, and 500 of them were put on administrative leave before this lawsuit was filed. And as of Friday night at midnight, the remaining 2,200 were supposed to be put on administrative leave. Well, this judge, appointed, by the way, by Donald Trump in his first term, blocked it and said, nope, those 2,200 people cannot be put on administrative leave, and the 500 people that were put on administrative leave need to be taken off administrative leave. So this was a big win for Democracy Forward, the legal organization that brought this lawsuit on behalf of these folks. A big win for USAID, obviously, the people who do the work, and a bit of a surprising black eye to many, to Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
Mark, before we go further into the legal implications of all this, can you just talk about what USAID is, what it does, and really, frankly, why Americans should even care about the preservation of this program?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is that USAID was created during the Cold War as a tool to win the Cold War. The idea was that we needed, in order to win the fight against the Soviet Union, against Chinese influence in Southeast Asia, we needed an agency that would deliver aid to people and thereby garner goodwill towards the United States, because in many, many parts of the world, the delivery of aid is inextricably linked with sort of the hearts and minds of the local population. So the idea was that if people were getting bags of grain that had an American flag on it, saying courtesy of the American people, and there were workers on the ground who are vaccinating their children or helping build roads, that this was a way
But who
to
will build the
win
roads?
the Cold War, to defeat communism, defeat the Soviet Union. It was part and parcel of a number of other programs like this, like, for example, the Peace Corps, right? The Peace Corps was also a program built by John Kennedy to defeat the Cold War by, again, creating this sort of soft power. And so over the years...
And now we
this
have
is
the
really
Climate
important.
Corps.
Over the years, some of the biggest proponents of USAID have actually been conservative, pro-military hawks, because they view, if you are a foreign policy hawk, if you're anti-Russia, anti-China, USAID has been viewed as one of the most effective tools to defeat China's expansionist plans, to defeat Russia's expansionist plans, and to, like I said, garner the goodwill of the local populations in a lot of parts of the world. So, the undoing of this is just a gift to the communists, in Beijing. This is a gift to Vladimir Putin. This is not helping America maintain its position of strength around the world.
Well, can you dig into that further? Because now what happens if USAID goes away, which, by the way, I know that the Elons of the world will frame this as some massive example of waste, fraud, and abuse. This is about 0.5% of the federal budget, and in exchange for that, to your exact point, we garner goodwill across the world without having to engage in any conflict, without having to fire any bullets. That's just a way to win over countries across the entire planet. So what happens in the absence of USAID that China would be looking to do, for example, given the fact that we would no longer be there?
Yeah, so I mean, China has its own program along these lines, as does Russia, as does ISIS, as does Iran, right? I mean, like, every time we talk about, as does North Korea, right? Like, every time we talk about these programs of influence, how is it that ISIS gains a foothold in a place, or how does China expand into Africa? It is oftentimes by setting up local aid services, setting up clinics, providing services at the local level, and USAID is a critical piece of doing that for the American public, so that people who feel like they are being fed by the United States, or getting vaccines from the United States, are less likely to be susceptible to Russian, to Chinese, to other terrorist movements who are otherwise competing to do that. So this is a huge win for China. I mean, like, the biggest single victor of this plan is going to be China, because China has been actively courting to get into this area, and they have a very well-funded program, and they will step in the void.
Right, and China's program is the Belt and Road Initiative, and to your exact point, now that the U.S. will kind of cede this ground, China is perfectly content to go through, which would presume to me to be against the interests of the United States, again, for a fraction of the cost of having to go to war in any of these countries across the world, just doing goodwill, aside from the fact that it's just virtuous to do HIV prevention, it's virtuous to do clean water programs, and on. We also get to garner that goodwill, and that'll help us economically, it'll help us with our national security, it'll help us militarily across the world. And so that would be against the interest of the United States, but it's not against the interest of somebody like Elon Musk, who has business interests in Beijing, who has business interests in Shanghai. And so he has a vested interest in making sure that he can help out China where he has the opportunity.
It's so choppy. Okay. We'll lower our fucking resolution again.
Opportunity, and by dismantling USAID even before he goes into the obvious ones like, I don't know, DOD, for example, which has failed the last almost dozen audits, he'll go into USAID, and the only people that will be better off in the long run as the result of this are going to be the only country that Elon is looking to expand his foothold in, which is China.
I mean, what is really sad is that there has been so much misinformation, disinformation spread about USAID and about what has been going on that, as you said, you know, in sort of your initial question, like, if you're just an average American and you're reading about this, you're thinking, oh, this is good. They're saving money. They're not, you know, they're not taking our taxpayer money and using it abroad. But the fact is that the way in which USAID money is spent, as you said, is some of the most effective ways to make sure that you have pro-U.S. governments, you have pro-U.S. populations, you have folks who, you know, aspire and see the United States as a friendly force. And what does that do? That means that as those societies develop, they become friendlier for American products. As governments form around them, they become more friendly to the United States, not just on a military basis, by the way, but also on all these other bases. I mean, every time we withdraw from the world's stage, it is not just that China is offering more aid or, you know, military support or anything else. They're also looking to build trading partners, and that is why it is so inexplicable that this is. But Brian, I want to say there was a lot of talk at the beginning of this administration about how competent they were going to be. Remember that? Like, they were going to come in and they were going to be super competent. Yeah. They keep losing court case after court case after court case. And I want to bring it back to something that I said. They lost this case before a judge appointed by Donald Trump in his first term. Now, you know, that there are, I think, two things to take away from that. The first is that I think people assume that every judge appointed by Donald Trump is going to always rule in his favor. I don't think we should look at a judge in Florida, for example, as the iconic example of how all judges work. This judge, I think, had a very thoughtful hearing, wrote a very thoughtful opinion. But the second thing is that, you know, people can't give up the fight. They can't think that there is no way to fight back against these things, because the fact is Donald Trump keeps losing these lawsuits. I mean, Donald Trump has now lost lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. His Department of Justice, the lawyers there must be shell-shocked by the number of cases they are having to defend and make fools out of themselves, frankly, in some of them. But they keep losing them. And the Department of Justice is not used to losing cases. And that's really the point I want to hammer to everyone. It is very unusual for a federal judge to slap down the Department of Justice over executive power. That's just like, you know, I mean, you really have to go a long way to overstep. And yet we keep seeing in case after case after case, that's what's happening. And so I'm sure these DOJ lawyers don't know what to do. Of course, they're also potentially being asked to retire, to take early retirement, or being threatened with being fired. So I'm sure that's not helping. But it's showing that the fight in court is working. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that.
Well, that's a good opportunity to underscore that, you have been consistent in pointing out that the courts are going to serve as our last and most effective bulwark against the worst excesses of the Trump administration. And you obviously cover them extensively on a daily basis with Democracy Docket, which is the news outlet you founded to focus on everything voting and elections. Highly recommend if you are looking for any news regarding what's happening in the courts, which again are proving that they are up to the task right now of standing up to the Trump administration in the same way that these Republicans in Congress are not. Please make sure to sign up for Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.
Joining us now is Norm Eisen, State Democracy Fund Chair, former Special Counsel and Special Assistant to President Obama. He was also an advisor to the impeachment managers during Trump's first impeachment. Norm, it's good to have you with us. What's your reaction to what we're hearing from the president and the vice president about how they see their executive powers?
Anna, I don't think the courts or the American people are going to let the vice president, the president, Mr. Musk, who's an administration official, who's also suggested that the courts may not need to be followed or judges may need to be unlawfully removed. He said that in one of his tweets earlier today. I don't think they're going to get away with that. What you're seeing is a shock and awe assault on the foundations of our democracy with all of these unconstitutional and illegal actions, and a responding shock and awe by my group and our allies and many others, going to court and securing these orders, stopping them. I won orders last week, the very first case locking Mr. Musk out of the Treasury Department. He has no right to look at that data. Tying the hands of the president, the attorney general, and others who want to reveal the identity of 6,000 FBI agents. They don't have any legal right to do that under the Privacy Act and otherwise. We're in court this morning arguing that Donald Trump's birthright citizenship, rewriting the Constitution, he gets to pick and choose who are citizens of the United States. No, we're in a courtroom right now with our allies fighting that, and we filed a brief on behalf of Anna, almost 24 conservatives. Every presidential administration, from Nixon to Trump's first administration, saying, of course, this offer to force federal employees out without the permission of Congress, illegal. So, and that case will be heard today. We've been involved in many of these cases, and they're going to lose.
Well, let me pick up on that last one you just mentioned, the case in Massachusetts that will be heard today. And you write in the amicus brief that you filed with a group of 22 Republicans, quote, this case comes at a critical moment in our nation's history when a new presidential administration seeks to expand its powers in relation to Congress. At the same time, it invites the federal courts to remove longstanding checks and balances under the law. Do you have confidence the courts will be that check?
Anna, I do. We've seen already the courage of the men and women of the federal judiciary standing up to Donald Trump. The vice president and others may speculate about defying court orders, but if they do, they're going to find an American political leadership and the American people from the grass tops to the grassroots. When I was preparing our Treasury order last week, Anna, we're getting ready to go to court. A spontaneous demonstration erupted, peaceful, in front of the Treasury. Political leaders from Congress and ordinary folks. So we know from other countries when the courts are backed by the people, they're able to oust autocracies. So I have confidence. We'll see what happens at the Supreme Court. But even this Supreme Court is not going to want to see their orders thwarted. That's the most fundamental principle. And I think American democracy is responding strongly, meeting shock and awe with shock and awe. I think we'll see success in the fork in the road case today in Boston. And I don't think the American people are going to let Trump, Vance, and Musk get away with defying court orders.
But seriously, though, what happens if this administration defies the courts and just ignores their order? I mean, you talk about protests, but who holds them really accountable? Do you see the court issuing a contempt order and the U.S. Marshals taking action?
I do. I think that the courts will start with civil contempt. They'll move to criminal contempt. They have broader sanctions. They're going to rule against the administration in that case. I think the Supreme Court will back them up. And Anna, look, the ultimate guarantee of a democracy is the people of that democracy peacefully exercising their will. The United States is not unique. We've seen autocratic regimes try to do this before. Poland, Brazil, Czech Republic, where I was ambassador, all in recent years had autocratic leaders ousted by the people. And I think American democracy is strong enough to meet this test. We are at a crossroads. That's why we've been involved in dozens of cases, with dozens more coming in the weeks and months ahead. But I believe in the strength of American democracy. If Donald Trump and Elon Musk and J.D. Vance test the will of the American people, of the American courts, I think they're going to get a very strong pushback.
Before I let you go, according to the New York Post, you were one of the officials that had security clearance just recently revoked by President Trump. How does that impact your work?
Enough talk.
I was on the list of 8 individuals that Trump targeted. I took it as a backhanded compliment, Anna, that these orders we've secured, the many cases we've been a part of at Democracy Defenders, are starting to bite. And I'm not going to let it affect my work. As I clap back at the president on social media, I take it as a backhanded compliment, and I'm going to redouble my efforts. We're not going to let this administration get away with it. The courts, rule of law, backed by the American people from the grass tops to the grassroots, are going to peacefully but forcefully defend our democracy. I'm proud to be a part of that, and the president is only encouraging me to work even harder.
Norm Eisen, appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us. I imagine conversation to be continued as you speak of more orders, more lawsuits to come.